a recorded copy of this presentation sent to you via email. I'm going to introduce Jeffrey to you guys, and thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Amber. Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody joining today. Wish the weather hadn't changed. It was so nice for the last few days, but it's getting a little cooler. I guess there's some advantage in that too as we are in spring. But yeah, so our topic for today is recruiting passive candidates and how this can help your business to succeed. We're going to talk about why there is real value in searching out those candidates that are not actively applying for jobs online, but who are nevertheless open to new work opportunities that can help them to advance their career goals. So before I jump into the topic, I just want to take a moment to tell you a little bit about our organization, what we do. As I imagine some of you might be wondering exactly who is BBSI. So next slide. So BBSI started as a staffing and recruiting firm back in 1972. So we've been doing this for over 50 years, quite a long time. And we've kind of evolved into what's now known as a professional employer organization, or PEO. So what that means is we provide an array of services to mostly small, medium-sized businesses, HR support, payroll, risk safety guidance, worker comp, and even employee benefit administration. So that's kind of what PEOs do. Most of them do it through either remote services, a website, or they have remote personnel located in different locations that you can access through web meetings and whatnot. But we actually have a model where we have local teams in place in each of our branch offices, like the branch office we have here, obviously in Modesto. And we have professionals who meet with the business owners, sit down with them, help them with things like business compliance with laws and regulations, even kind of planning their business growth and things like that. So that's kind of what we do. And as part of that, we provide recruiting and staffing services to the PEO clients. So that's kind of where I come in, as we've been doing that in Modesto office for over 24 years. So this includes temp to hire, temp workers, and direct hire placements. So having said that, I hope that gives you a little bit better idea of kind of what we do here and what my role is. So next slide, please. So next slide, what's the ROI of hiring great people? So here's we see some quotes from some highly successful professionals who come from a variety of fields and are generally recognized as having been at the very top of their profession at one point or another. So there's also one other thing they have in common. They all recognize that having talented people around them has been the key to their success. So we start with Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft, remains one of the top tech firms in the world. It's fair to say that Microsoft is still a major player in the whole technology space. No question about that. Second quote is from Phil Jackson. Some of you sports fans will probably know he was the coach of Chicago Bulls and later with the Los Angeles Lakers. And if you ask a really knowledgeable sports fan how many titles Phil has as a coach, they would say 11, which is correct. Five with the Lakers and 6 with the Bulls. But they would forget that he also has one as a player with the New York Knicks back in the 1970s. So he has 12 NBA titles, a record that is unequaled by anyone else in the history of the NBA. So quite an achievement. There's also Tina Fey, who's writer, producer of TV shows 30 Rock, which was popular back in the 2000s. And also she was a cast member of Saturday Night Live for quite a while. So she's done that as well. And then Ray Kroc, founder of McDonald's, which even today, almost 70 years after it started, is still an fast food industry leader, which is quite an achievement. And then lastly, Mark Benioff, who's the founder of Salesforce, which has been around for about 25 years, worldwide leader in software industry, especially with its CRM solution. I know a lot of you probably use Salesforce on a regular basis, as we do in our company. So in conclusion, the teams that have the best player always seem to come out on top, whether in sports or in real life. So this is kind of the crux of what I want to talk about today. So next slide, here's some perspective. 2/3 of HR leaders globally say there's labor shortage is getting worse. Talent acquisition teams are struggling to get enough qualified candidates into their pipelines to reach their hiring goals. In the US, for example, there are nearly 2 open jobs for every unemployed job seeker. And 61% of US business leaders say it's an increasing challenge to attract the top tier talent. Now, here's 2 facts, and they kind of contradict each other, but they are both true. Fact number 1, job seekers have many opportunities available to them, and that's creating a lot of competition in the talent market. But it's not the way it's been the last 2 or 3 years, but there's still a lot out there for them, so they still have choices. Absolutely. So fact number one. Fact number two, there is a mismatch between the skill of the people who are actively seeking employment and the positions that companies are looking or trying to fill within their organizations. So, yeah, there's a lot of job seekers out there. The question is, do they possess the skills that the companies are looking for to help achieve the goals that their organization is trying to achieve? So that's kind of that's where those two things kind of collide and crash into each other. So, well, kind of then it's like, well, how did we get here? So next slide, please. How did we get here? Well, it didn't actually happen overnight. It actually happened over the past 4 decades or past 40 years. So, if you go back to 1980, the labor participation rate in the United States was about 64%. That's men, women, everything. So what was the reason for this? Well, we had well-defined entry-level jobs that led people to gradually increase their skills and move up the ladder of success. Also, there was a high investment in trade schools that helped train young people valuable skills: carpentry, electrical, woodworking, welding, auto body, auto mechanics, all of those areas. That was all being really focused on back then. Now, 40 years later, we see the labor participation rate has declined significantly. And as we see but we do see a more diverse workforce. So there's been an overall decline in the workforce participation rate, but there's also this mismatch between jobs and people that I referred to just moments ago. Next slide, please. So just to put it in perspective here, 1980s, we reached a labor participation rate of 64%, which at the time was the highest we had ever achieved. By 1990, that rate went up to 66.5%. So we increased that by 2.5% in 10 years. And then another 10 years, we jump ahead to the year 2000, and it reaches 67%, which is the all-time highest rate that we've reached in the United States. So, okay, wow, we're at the top of the mountain. Well, yeah. And then 10 years later, we dropped down to 64.7%. So we're dropping now. And obviously some factors there that we'll talk about. Obviously, there was the housing crisis and financial crisis that took place 2008, 2009, all of that. And then, of course, 10 more years, we jump ahead. And we see that it had dropped to in COVID 2020, 61%. That's kind of where that had dropped to. So that's kind of the reality of it. It's been a wild ride, but the fact is there's a lot of people who are capable and able to work that for various reasons are not participating in the workforce, and so that's obviously a concern. Okay, so we point that out. So the key question is. Next slide, please. How do we find those hidden gems in a sea of kind of mediocrity? So a recent study by Achievers estimates that passive candidates account for 39% of the talent pool. Passive candidates. So this represents an enormous opportunity for recruiters to fill their talent pipeline with candidates who aren't actively considering other roles, yet are open to new opportunities. So, you look here, you see, again, you've got that hole to fill, and you've got all these people out there, but who's really qualified? Who really meets the definition of what we're looking for? It's sort of like the needle in the haystack. Yeah, okay, it's there, but can you find it? That's kind of where it gets to. So you think about the recruitment process, it really begins with the recruiter having a kickoff meeting with the hiring manager to learn more about the role and the respective responsibilities. And the recruiter needs that meeting, needs that information to help develop a profile of what that ideal candidate looks like in order to target the strongest candidates that are out there in the market. Okay, next slide, please. So when we think about, well, what are the 6 reasons we want to focus on these passive candidates? Well, let's talk about them. Here's the first 3. So, and again, you are able to reach passive candidates through the various job boards, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn, although they offer these subscriptions, and I'll talk more about that in a few minutes, that you can access candidates' resumes and you identify them and you can reach out to them. You don't get all their information because it kind of lets them decide if they want to engage with you or not. So you're only able to contact them with a message. If they do say they're interested and they want to engage with you, then you'll get the rest of their contact information. Just wanted to point that out. So reason number 1, So these passive candidates, they already have jobs. They're not actively seeking opportunities, but they are open to them. So in many cases, they possess skills and experience that can make them a really highly valuable asset to your company. Number two, let's call it reduced competition, or let's call it a strategic advantage. But you're able to focus your efforts on top talent that other companies aren't even aware of, because they're kind of relying solely on applicants who are applying to their job postings, while you're taking it to a completely different level. So another, again, strong reason why we want to focus on these candidates. Number three, passive candidates are often very selective about the job opportunities they will pursue because they already have a job. They're not, needing a job to pay the rent and all their other bills. They've got a job. So if they are hired by your firm, they're more likely to stay for the longer term, assuming, and these are big ones, assuming the new role and your company culture align with their long-term career goals. So that's the key there. If that aligns perfectly, they'll probably be with you for quite a while, which is obviously what everybody wants, because turnover is the ultimate killer in this world. And we know that there are companies who suffer from constant turnover, whether it's 20%, 30%, 50%. We see it. And so that exists. Next slide, please. So let me give you 3 more reasons. Number 4, by targeting passive candidates, you're able to find those candidates that come from an array of different industries with background and experience that can add both breadth and depth to your organization. So anybody remember the phrase, the whole of the sum is greater than the individual parts? Well, that's kind of what that means, right? So yeah, it provides you with a chance to diversify and expand the skill set within your workforce in ways that you might not be able to do if you just used job postings to do it. Number 5, targeting candidates enables you to add people who have skills that do not or may not exist within your organization. I kind of said this earlier too, and it's true. I mean, you have a chance to add some skills that, maybe benefit everyone within the organization, or at least within the group that this person works in. And so that's, again, enhancing your company's overall skill set. Number 6, engaging with these candidates can help the recruiters that work for you build a robust network of professionals that they can tap into in the future, which is mutually beneficial to both the candidate and the recruiter as they move forward. So that's also beneficial in that it gives you the tap into other professionals that are out there that are part of this overall network. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at the tools that we need to be successful in recruiting passive candidates. Well, resume search tools. I mentioned this just a moment ago. So they're offered by all the major players. The subscription rates can range from $125 a month each to more than $500 a month, depending on the firm and what the features are of that. But these tools are out there that allow recruiters to actively look for and identify these candidates who, again, are not maybe actively applying to jobs, but are out there. They've kind of indicated they're open to opportunities, new opportunities. And so if you make the right approach, and we'll talk about that in a few moments, make the right approach to them, you can hopefully engage them in a discussion that actually will lead you to be able to bring that person aboard in the future. Number 2, the applicant tracking system. So most recruiters have access to a recruiter database through an ATS, as we call it, applicant tracking system. The size of the database can vary depending on the agency or company size and its specialization, geographic location, and other factors. But, to give you an estimate, some medium to large size agencies probably have anywhere from 10,000, 20,000 candidates to over 100,000. And so, that's powerful because you can put the candidates into different industries they work with, skill sets, all of that, slice and dice. And so when you have a job that comes to you, you're able to really first look at what's in your database already and look at who's there and start there before you even have to go externally to look for them. So that's very powerful. Number 3, employee referrals. Obviously, that's very powerful. So even if the candidate that you reach out to and engage with doesn't end up being the right person for the job for one reason or another, they may know some people that would be good candidates, and that discussion to take place between the recruiter and them about, well, maybe somebody that you think might have these capabilities and these skills, and anybody you recommend? And oftentimes they will recommend someone, and often those are very valuable referrals because they're probably not going to recommend someone they don't feel is very capable and somebody they don't have have a high opinion of. So that's important and that's valuable as well. Obviously, professional associations, very good way to network and find candidates. And, we all know of different associations, SHRM, Chamber of Commerce, Rotary clubs, all of those different associations are out there as well. And then social media. Yeah, I mean, social media continues to be powerful. Some recruiters use it more extensively than others. LinkedIn is one of the ones that's obviously designed as a business networking application, and it's very powerful. And I think most professionals try to have some sort of profile on LinkedIn, so it's a good way to kind of find out a little bit of information about everyone, even if you don't have a resume. Facebook has been used obviously extensively. X to some degree, which is formerly known as Twitter. TikTok for as long as it's around. Now that who knows what's going to happen with TikTok in the future, but I know there are recruiters that have used TikTok and had success with that as well. And then lastly, business conferences, they're taking place all the time. There's one in that we actually BBSI and Opportunity Stanislaus were very involved with last year, called the Central Valley Business Expo. That's going to be coming again this year, later this year in October. So get ready for that, October, November, and get ready for that, because that's a very powerful way to kind of network with people from different industries and businesses and kind of build those alliances. So that's powerful as well. Next slide, please. So candidate outreach, what do we do to connect with these candidates? So we've identified them. What do we have to do next? Well, really that message that we put together, we got to be creative in that, and so we want to craft something that's catchy and will capture their attention and intrigue them a little bit. So just putting a message with a subject line job opening X or whatever, that might not do it. That might be a little limited, and they might get a few of those all day long and not be interested. So I think it's better if we can kind of share a connection or show something that we've done a little bit of research on them and something more personal to appeal to them. So next slide, please. So some effective tips here. Personalize the message. The LinkedIn data shows that personalized emails perform about 15% better than ones that are sent in bulk. So a bulk message that you send out to 20 different people, it's time saving, but is it effective? And clearly this research indicates that the more personalized you can make it, the more effective it would be. Share what's in it for me, what's something intriguing to help them understand that there's something valuable here and you're really excited to talk to them about it, so that they really decide, okay, it's worth a few minutes of my time to talk with this person. So, you get that little buy-in there. Next steps, that's always important. What are the next steps? Make sure you make it clear, like what the next step is, what action needs to be taken, which is usually them agreeing to meet with you or indicating they're interested and would like to connect with you. So that's really what you want to make sure is clear in your message. And then obviously brevity is always important in everything, and certainly in this as well. And the research indicates that, you really want to limit that message to about 200 to 400 characters, which is not as much as you might think. So it's got to be short, sweet, and to the point. In that way you can see better results as far as getting a positive response. So let me share an example. Next slide. I'm not saying this is the greatest one in the world, but this will show you it's short, sweet, to the point, So warm greetings, and you can read it for yourself. My name is Jeffrey. I came across your profile on LinkedIn, wanted to reach out, learn more about your experience. We're currently looking for a bookkeeper, payroll specialist, join our team, and your experience in this role at this company, we might be relevant for that. If you're open to it, I'd like to arrange a time to discuss the role and you're fit for it. Let me know what dates work for you, and I'll send you a meeting invitation. Short, sweet, to the point, and kind of, that gives them the ability to say, okay, I'm willing to talk about this. And if they're not interested, they're not interested. But what's the hit rate on these messages? It really varies, but I would say anywhere from 20% to 40% can be achieved. Usually it's not past 50% unless you got something really special going on. It's generally in that range. So 1 out of every 5 candidates might respond, maybe 3 out of every 5. If you got something really good. So that's just to give you a little perspective on that. Next slide, please. So casual conversation. So you get them to agree to talk to you. So let's make sure, first of all, don't make it sound like a formal interview. Okay. You want to make it more of a casual conversation. You're there to gather information about them. You want to induce them to share information about themselves that will help you determine whether or not they're the right fit for the job. You also will need to sell them on your company or your client's company and convince them that the job has everything they're looking for. So yes, caution here. You sell them the sizzle, not the steak, but you do not, and I mean you do not ever want to mislead anybody. You want to be honest and transparent with them. So anyone who thinks it's a good idea to mislead them and sell them something that's not accurate, no, that your career would be very short in this field, because integrity and reputation are everything in the recruiting industry. So those two things go hand in hand. So you definitely want to make sure that goes as part of your message. Okay, next slide. So thinking about all this, why do people leave their jobs in the first place? And we probably know most of these, and definitely at top of the list, compensation. So if they have a chance to make more money, it makes sense for them and their family, and it's a good move career wise, they will probably be more than willing to look at the opportunity. So compensation, career and personal growth opportunities right at the top. The intrinsic environment, enjoyment of the work is important too, and that goes with the culture. So that's going to be important. So if you got a really good, strong culture in the company, that's really something that's really attractive to candidates. Relationships and connection with others, they get to meet some of the team members they're going to be working with in the interview process. That can often be very powerful to helping them say, yeah, this is the right situation for me. Professional autonomy, everybody likes to feel like they can kind of be master of their destiny and not be micromanaged. Flexible work opportunities, that's always good if there's some flexibility there. And then mission and values alignment, that always is important. They definitely want to understand the mission of the company, and does the values of that company align well with their values. Those are all reasons why people will leave and go to another company, especially if, for example, their current situation, they don't feel that they're aligned with the values and the mission. They feel limited with their work opportunities, and the relationships aren't strong. Those are big reasons for people to pack up and leave. Okay, next slide, please. So, word of advice: simplify the candidate evaluation process. So, what does that mean? Next slide, please. What does that mean? Yeah, there we go. Application process, there's a lot of regulations around applications and what has to be in them and whatever, but you want to try to make it so it's not too difficult. And so, some candidates may not have completely updated resumes. If that's the case, maybe you can get them to update it, or maybe you can use their LinkedIn profile, or you want to be a little bit flexible if you can, because obviously if they are the right fit for the job, you don't want to let these things get in the way. So think about that. The interview process as well. You don't want to take excessive time away from their work, especially if there's somebody who really, feels like they owe to their employer to give their all the time. They probably don't feel good about having to leave for multiple interviews. So, some companies will, in the past, would want to do 5, maybe 6 interviews. I think you really got to think about 2 to 3 interviews as the max that you would want to pull them out for. And so you want to, maximize that time. And maybe the first interview is on the phone, second one in person with the hiring manager, and third one maybe with a team. Maybe that's the process there. So think about that. Reference checks. Yeah. Be careful there, because they probably don't want to give a reference of their current manager unless it's like they've already had discussions with the manager and he or she's okay with them looking elsewhere and whatnot. But yeah, you also want to be, with previous companies. So you want to navigate that, but you definitely want to do reference checks, and you need to find people that have worked with them, supervise them, to talk to about them and what their work habits are, and how good they are at their job and all of that. So yeah, you definitely want to look at past managers, peers, direct reports, all of that if you can. So, but yeah, 3 references is usually the standard that is used. And those references can be really valuable, because when you talk to them, sometimes those references you talk to, you kind of strike up a rapport with them, and you start asking them about, about themselves or other people they may know that are maybe interested in the jobs and you may be looking to fill. So those things can really build up some momentum for you. So it's really important to do those reference checks as well. Next slide. So yeah, so questions. Hope I didn't rush through it. I was just wanting to focus on what are some of the keys here and what will benefit everyone as they, think about this. And again, these are the nuggets of gold that are out there that I think are often sometimes overlooked by even recruiters or internal recruiters, external recruiters, whatever. And there really is value in focusing on these passive candidates because, as I say from my own experience, I found them to be very, very much qualified and to be people that would stay for the longer term than other candidates who seem to be more jumping from job to job every 2 years or whatever it may be. But yeah, questions. I'm open to whatever questions you may have.
Thank you, Jeffrey. That was great. Folks, if you just want to unmute or pop your questions into chat, that would be good. Jeffrey, do you know what a good employee referral amount is right now?
A good employee referral amount, when you say amount,
How much you would offer your employees to successfully refer
oh,
somebody?
I'm sorry, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, internal. Yeah, those incentives, employee incentives. A lot of companies will do at least $500. Some companies will do 1,000. And yeah, it's really a good way to incentivize your internal employees to recommend people that they know. They probably are not going to recommend somebody that they don't feel is a good worker or a good candidate because it kind of reflects back on them. You do make, I think it's important when you do this to make it a condition of that they need to stay aboard for at least 3 months. You don't want people recommending and then the employees come and they stay a month and they leave. So that's usually a condition of it. But yeah, I think $500 to $1,000 is usually, and if you want to go higher than that, great. But that's usually the amounts that I've seen, and we've done it in BBSI for a number of years. So those are good incentives to have internally. Yeah.
Great. So if anybody has any questions, you can unmute yourself right now. Otherwise, we will be sending out this video and Jeffrey's contact information in case you guys want to follow up or you want to utilize Jeffrey and BBSI's services to help with your recruitments. So I'm just going to give everybody just 1 second before we wrap it up in case you're typing or thinking of things.
Yeah, I would, if anybody would want to share like their results, if they've done recruiting for passive candidates, I mentioned earlier, I think, from 20 to 40% is probably the range as a rule. And that's talking to other recruiters and my own experience. But if anybody else had a different experience, I'd love to hear it. But like I said, I think that's usually, like I said, 1 out of 5, 2 out of 5, maybe 3 out of 5, but that's probably as high as I've ever heard it goes as far as being able to, get those people to engage with you. So it's not 100% success, but that's okay. You don't need 100% success. It's all about the numbers, and the more you reach out to, the more success you're going to have. So definitely like to point that out as well.
Would you see a reason, Jeffrey, to include the salary that you're offering in that brief intro?
So that's a good question. And so, in by law in California, you're required when you post jobs to list the salary. It's generally a good idea to have a range. Most firms will do the range, and if range is a DOE, depending on experience, right? So it's good if you have that range, and yeah, the candidate's probably going to want to know that right at the beginning. So generally, when I reach out to them, passive candidates, they generally want to know that. So that'll be one of the first questions you'll come your way. And I don't see any reason not to share it. In fact, if you don't want to share it, that might be a red flag for them. Like, then they lose interest pretty quickly.
For sure.
Yeah.
One final thing that I just wanted to include for everybody is if you do get the person to apply, make sure you then follow up with them about whether or not you're going to move forward with them as a viable option. We have seen around this region that we're not always the best at following up on applications just due to bandwidth issues. So I would just encourage you to keep them a lead for the future, like Jeffrey said, in your ATS, by really being sure to follow up with them.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up, Amber. That's a really valuable point because, Yeah, if we're gonna take some of their time, the least we can do is keep them in the loop and let them know if the client's decided to move on, or we've decided to move on to some other candidates and they're no longer being considered. Show the respect to at least let them know that, and that's just being professional. Agreed.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Jeffrey. It looks like we are out of questions, so everybody will kind of keep this dialogue going via email if interested, and we appreciate your time and expertise.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.